talking.
I know, it's very early. Paul McKee is having trouble getting in. He's looking for the passcode. It's 3333, I think, isn't it?
Tell him his name's not down. He's not getting in.
I'll tell him that. Yeah.
Is
He doesn't do the high jump. He's only got a 135 PV. There's no room for him.
He's a
He
trouble.
needs to put another meter onto that. 235 might give him a look in. Yeah.
Paul's keen to stir some discontent and just to stoke any flames that might exist. But I was actually talking to Alex this evening, who's our star guest, and one thing he said actually down the track tonight was he's actually buddies with Fuzz Ahmed. Is it Fuzz Ahmed in the UK? He's met up with him in the past and traveled with him, and he said that he was really impressed by the attitude that, in any given workshop or presentation or talk, not everything is going to be relevant to everybody, and you're going to disagree with some stuff, and that's okay. I thought that was a really good point, that you just take what's useful for you, and if it's not useful, just either challenge it, which is fine, disagree with it, which is fine, but just go down the rabbit hole. I mean, it's all about the learning experience, and nobody is all knowing. So the beautiful thing about last week with Olivia and the ladies was there was a wonderful discussion had. Don't you think, Olivia? It was like a really good camaraderie between everybody. And
yeah, it was, and it was lovely that it was so informal and it just flowed. And to hear their experience and to realize that even at home in Ireland, there's a lot of untapped experience as it is. And
exactly.
Even to hear like Lucy's story, to really go through because it's very hard to make that transition, as everyone says, from juvenile to elite senior level, and how she did it, bringing Deirdre through. So there's a lot more in that story alone.
Exactly. And I know,
mind the other girls. Yeah.
Exactly. It was great energy. And I think there's a commitment there that people really want to help people make that breakthrough. Pippa, it's good to see you there. Thanks for coming. One of the things that we also talked about this evening was that, plateaus are quite normal when people reach a certain standard. But getting out of a rut, if you're there for more than a year, maybe 2 years, and you think, oh, my performance is leveled off, sometimes it takes great courage to break out of a comfort zone or to change. It might seem obvious to change. And one of the things we've talked about from the get-go is that we all have our own stories and experiences. But my story from the mid-90s was I didn't even recognize my rut. I was in denial about the plateau that I was facing. And I kind of put it down to injury or whatever, but maybe lack of competition. But the truth is that I wasn't doing the right stuff. And because your opportunity is so finite, it's so short, you really got to nail it. You can't afford to let 2 or 3 years pass by, because by the time you get to your mid-20s, you need to be getting the returns. You need to be achieving what you set out to achieve. Tonight, Alex Stewart did say to me that, because I only left him about half an hour ago at Olympic Park, and my commute was about 20 minutes. And I'm pretty sure his commute was about 40 minutes. So he might be a little bit late, but he's definitely looking forward to it, and he will be joining us. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask Olivia, because she's been so good at hosting these things in the past. Olivia, what do you think the takeaways were from last week? Just as a summary, like was there like 2 or 3 things that you think, okay, this is what we might do different, or what will develop from it?
But just to remember, I suppose that we touched on it there at the plateau. Like athletes will plateau, but then it's there's a lot of similarities between all the talks. Even Stefan Holm touched on that too. You mightn't get a PB for a year or two, but you'll get PBs in other areas. You'll get PBs in your flying 30, your drills or whatever. And then last week the big thing was conditioning. You have to have your body fully conditioned. And then also it was interesting, the functional conditioning of just jumping and jumpers. The big thing was jumpers jumping together. Pippa, do you want to turn on your mic there, Pippa, if you want? I just putting you in. Do you jump on your own, or do you jump with somebody? You're in the UK, you're based there in Bristol, isn't it, or something? Do you jump on your own then, or do you jump with someone?
Well, I jump on my own. well, I'm not
Yeah.
jumping at all at the moment.
Yeah.
But I meet up with Steve once a week, and when we can jump, we jump together. Well, he doesn't do any
Yeah.
jumping, but
Yeah. And how do you
uh,
find that? Do you miss? Because what we got from the girls last week was like they were so lucky there in the north. It was really Wendy's mother who brought in the expertise from the UK, and all the girls had a training group. And I know myself when I was jumping, the Ball twins were older than me, and they pushed me on when I was jumping, you know. So and then I know when they left, I had nobody to jump with. I had no one to train with. I had nothing, and it was lonely. And Deirdre then did say herself that when she went to Germany, she had a great pool of jumpers to jump with. So talking about last week, our big takeaway point was getting high jump hubs going here in Ireland. In the UK too, we're going reaching out to wherever you can reach out, just so to make it fun, you know. So and to touching on last week, so they were the big ones, jumpers jumping together, reaching out for expertise. Deirdre
Yeah.
got great expertise reaching, and then also what Deirdre was saying too was the technique. It's they pulled her back in Germany, focusing on every minute detail of the jump, technique, and
Terrific. I've just seen
yeah,
Alex arrive actually, so thank you very
yeah.
much
I'll
for
stay
that.
quiet now. Yeah.
No, it's all good. So just a very quick summary just for Alex. We've just been waiting for a few minutes for people to log in, and we've got quite a good number, so we might as well kick off. Is your audio working okay, Alex? Do you want to say hello, maybe introduce yourself briefly? You might need to unmute yourself first.
Yep.
That's it. Cool.
Good morning to everybody. I presume still morning.
That's it.
So obviously my name's Alex Stewart. I am the coach of Brandon Stark and Eleanor Patterson. And I'm also currently employed as the National High Jump Coach for Athletics Australia. Some other athletes that I've coached in the past include Niraj Singh Randawa of Malaysia, who's the national record holder with 2 meters 30. And I also coached another Malaysian, Lee Hapway, for about 2 to 3 years. And at the time, he jumped to 28 with me.
Cool. Fantastic. So really pleased you could be here, Alex. And just to repeat a short message for everyone. Look, one of the key takeaways should really be that there's no real silver bullet, and there's no magic kind of formula. There's no secret. There's no great shortcuts. I think we discussed it tonight, Alex, that when you get to the kind of level we're talking about, really the biggest contributor to success is commitment and consistency. And I think Stefan Holm articulated that really well when he talked about the consistent, stable training environment he had for many, many years, and that accumulative effect over those years. And I guess similarly with Sotomayor from one of the earlier talks, he had this kind of the benefit of a center of excellence, which I'm sure you're familiar with too in Canberra. Maybe you could start to tell us a little bit about how high performance is managed in Australia, and maybe reference what the best days of the Institute of Sport. I'm not sure how the funding is right now for the Canberra Institute.
This could be a very long conversation.
I know it's been a bit controversial lately, but maybe you could fill us in. And Ireland has been trying to do something similar with Abbotsford, guys. I should know this, but I've never been there. But yeah, tell us about Canberra.
So I'm sure that a lot of people are aware of the Australian Institute of Sport, and probably most people are aware of what it was in its glory days, essentially, which were, I'd say probably majority of the 90s was where the AIS was at its strongest. Recent administrations have decided to steer the AIS away from what it was. And if we're talking particularly about track and field, there are currently no resident athletes at the Australian Institute of Sport, and they also do not employ any coaches.
Wow.
which is a far cry from what it was during its heyday in the mid to late 90s, where there were probably 5 to 6 full-time employed coaches, and there would have been something in the vicinity of 20 to 25 scholarship athletes, and maybe about 15 of those would have been on residence.
So how big an impact do you think it was to have the guys living together, training together? I mean, it's obviously a big surge in funding pre-Sydney 2000.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it had a huge impact. So my wife is a lady by the name of Nicole Bergman, and she long jumped 6 meters 87, 712 windy. And she was in one of the initial group of track and field athletes that went into the AIS. And through the mid to late 90s, her training partners included Jai Tarima, 849 long jump, Rowan Robinson was 48.2 seconds, 400 hurdles, Jane Fleming, 6,600 point heptathlete, another guy by the name of Matthew Beckenham, who'd run 49.2 in the 400 meter hurdles. And I can probably add another 4, 5, 6 athletes of that level. So when you have a group of that status kind of bouncing off each other day in, day out, a high level of results are inevitable.
Yeah, the synergy effect is something we touched on before. And I could feel it tonight, your little posse down by the track. I mean, you guys stick together, and there's a lot of positive energy there. I'm curious, I'm going to ask Barry here about, again, briefly about his experience in Cardiff, because, I mean, I'm confident these kind of hubs, and I know Olivia kind of was encouraging this last week, these hubs could be built informally, but ideally it would be a formal thing, and Dave Sweeney's of the world could potentially influence this. And I'm sure it would work better if it was professionalized. But Barry, I mean, I benefited greatly from a UCD scholarship system, albeit I was mixing with runners who weren't, the best company for a jumper, but still it was high performance, and we shared a lot of the same interests and lifestyle. But Barry, what was it like for you in Wales, and were you kind of disappointed that you had to go overseas to find that kind of high performance environment for high jump?
It would be nice to stay at home, but I kind of was abroad quite a lot, because I was with Fuzz over there for 2 years as well when I was younger. So I was kind of back and forth, and then I did sort of mini retire like 3 times as well. So I was constantly stop start for a good few years. I never had a long period where I was training. I always did maybe 2 years, year off, 2 years, year off, or something like that. But it would have been nice to have something similar here. I think I'm just coming right now. A lot of facilities are just sort of developing here that were already in the UK, if that makes sense. I know like Abbottstown is pretty cool there at the moment. I know no one can use it at the moment. The Institute of Sport there is pretty cool as well, but I never really used it either. It would have been really nice to have all of that there maybe and available when I was, say, 18.
So do you think it's missing anything, or do you think it's fit for purpose? Do you think Abbottstown could produce, elite high jumpers, long jumpers, 8 meter guys, 230 guys? Do you think they have the ingredients, or is there anything missing in your view?
It's probably more a work in progress, I would say, to put it politically, probably the best way to put it. It is like the facilities are there now, but it's just getting there, using them, getting access to all of the expertise that are over the Institute as well. That's slowly been developing. We're probably playing catch up in that respect to a lot of countries. And I suppose it's all based in Dublin as well. And we don't really, I think our best jumpers aren't actually based around Dublin either, are they? So that's probably a challenge as well.
That's interesting. Alex, what do you think would be the critical success factors, for a high performance hub, apart from professional coaching, which may need a a particular, finance focus or a budget. Do you think you can get away without necessarily paying the coaches, or how could we do it on a limited budget?
Well,
even informally.
Look, it can be done in what is not necessarily a high performance environment. I know we talk about high performance environments being, fantastic tracks and, amazingly kitted out weight rooms and medical support staff and, all the bells and whistles. It can be done without this. You need a track. They're all the same, in my opinion. You need a weight room, which has your essential equipment that you need. It doesn't need to be anything flash, but you need a platform, you need a squat rack, you need some boxes and some med balls and some supplementary equipment. And you need a reasonable physio and you need a reasonable massage therapist. If you have those things, that is enough, in my opinion. Anything that you can put on top of that is a bonus.
Can I ask you a question there, Anton?
Yeah, shoot for it.
Do you mind? It's a question for you, Alex, because we came up last week too. Here in Ireland, most of us, the majority of coaches are volunteer coaches. Majority of coaches work full-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big thing that Deirdre had said with Lucy. Lucy is a full-time clinical psychologist, and she was trying to squeeze in at any spare moment training. So for you there, you obviously coach high performance jumpers. You're a paid coach, I assume, there in Australia.
So I am paid.
Yeah.
So I became employed by Athletics Australia in November of last year.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I was able to coach full time through charging my athletes. Depending on the level of the athlete and the funding that they have available to them, I charge them different amounts. I have kids that are in year 7, 8, 9 at high school, who I coach in one group, up to people like Brandon and Eleanor who have got the support of the National Federation and shoe contracts and whatever else they have to support them.
If I could offer some context to that, Olivia, it's par for the course down here. There's very few coaches who don't work on a semi-professional basis, and I'm quite supportive of the idea, because it's time, and time is valued as in the same way as your work time would be valued. And I think the volunteering thing is possibly more suitable for little athletics, juveniles, etc. But when the expertise requirements rise, that's when I think it's appropriate that it becomes more professional. Now, how you structure that, how you organize it is another matter. But I'm interested in the injury thing, Alex. Sorry to change the topic a little bit.
Sorry, can I just add one thing in? And the thing that I like about having a fee, and whatever that fee might be, is that I believe it creates accountability as well. If there's no fee exchanged and we use the word volunteer, and then it's too easy for either party to just walk away. But that's my opinion.
Does anyone else have a view on that, or a question about the professional structures of coaching down here or anywhere?
I agree with Alex there on that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good man, Stephen.
Just that the accountability creates accountability is huge, but only at that top level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree too, and I think we have a problem certainly in the UK about charging. Very few coaches charge athletes, but the accountability argument from Alex is perfect, and I think that's something we need to work on. I agree totally with that. But over in the UK we have, and I guess in Ireland too, it's all volunteer basis, and that'll take you so far. But I think that we need a bit of a cultural change on that, and there's some degree of embarrassment, I think, as well in the UK about charging people. I think it's but it's if you want to be professional and move to the high performance, it's something we need to think about quite seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
sorry,
support
can I
that.
just come in there? We currently have a group of middle distance athletes who were in action last night, and via the Dublin Track Club. You know, so my understanding is that Phelan is getting some fee there, but it's very minimal. Joe Ryan has Keane McPhillips and John Fitzsimons currently. Well, they ran, so Keane McPhillips is through to the semi-final of the 1800 of the 800 meter, and like there's no fee. He in essence is volunteering now. He's involved with DCU now, and there's some fee there. But over the majority, like for me personally, from my coaching background, I do multi events. I've had 8 athletes reach gain in Ireland best over different disciplines, and money has never exchanged hands. And I would believe that I would have always been accountable for the results, but it is the culture that's here in Ireland. You know, there might be a view that volunteering is for little athletics, but throughout the length and breadth of the country, generally speaking, the only people who are being paid are the coaches who are appointed by the AAI, or if you happen to have an RDO who's also being coached, but he or she in effect are being paid for their RDO role. So that would be my own personal experience in relation to money. I've a guy who's just come back from Sydney. He joined me last year, and the first thing he asked me when he rocked up to our track was, how much was my fee? And the entire training group just started laughing, and he went, what's going on? And they all just went, well, there's actually no fee involved, you know. And he was really, really surprised, you know, and that has resulted in him offering to pay for my personal coaching insurance, which was very nice. But yeah, it seems to be, you know, like he was amazed. Anyway, that's all I have on it. I'll tune out now.
Yeah.
I'll shut up now.
Yeah, I'd like to come in there, I suppose, from our side in Ireland, where I suppose traditionally through the GAA culture, we're very based a lot on being voluntary and doing training and stuff like that. So I'd be interested in Alex. Here we have GAA is kind of the main sport, and it's one of our, I suppose, it soaks a lot of athletes away from us, but probably similar in Australia, you have footy. What is the combination, and do they support each other, athletics and footy? Is there something that we can learn in Ireland that we can maybe merge the two, I suppose, associations together in any way, or are you at loggerheads as much over there?
I'd say we're equally at loggerheads over here, and I wouldn't say that football supports track and field in any way.
Yeah.
In most of the time, we're competing for the same talent.
It's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Look.
Sorry, just quickly on that too.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
What's kind of become interesting in the last few years is that we now have a fully professional women's netball league, as well as a fully professional women's Australian rules football league. So we're now seeing an increasing amount of women starting to move away from track and field.
And is there, I suppose, a mindset, or is there anybody grasping that turn and saying, lads, we got to pull together here? You know, there's only one Mary and she can't play all 3 sports, or she can, if we combine and do some outside of the box thinking and support each other.
No.
Can I say something there, Martin? It's funny you bring it up, because just last week here where I live in the middle of Ireland, in Killaloe, it's a twin town, Killaloe, Ballina, we're very lucky. We've pulled together rugby, both GAA, Tip and Clare, tennis, soccer, and we're putting a plan together to make it athlete, player, teenager centric training, so that they'll do their fitness will be through athletics, their base conditioning, their strength and conditioning, their agility training, and then match play, match tactics, all that will be taken care of during their soccer training schedule, their rugby trainings. It's a pilot program. So give us 6 months and we'll let you know, is it working? Yeah, and
Very
if it
good.
is, Alex, you can run with it down in Australia as well. No problem. So yeah, so
Well,
please
I
God,
think that, yeah, because if it does work, I mean, all associations get grants from the government. So I know if you're doing a building or something like that with regards to sports, you know, back in the old days, you had to add a basketball court. It was kind of part of the rules, you know. I don't know if it's still there or not, but like if the GAA pitch are doing some kind of renovations to their grounds, then why not be it compulsory to put a 50-meter track into GAA? You know, it's
and make it athlete centered, because they're talking, like, you know, when you overtrain too, you put too much of a load on the central nervous system, and we have so many teenagers, early 20s, with so many mental health problems as well. So it's that whole total well-being of the individual. So, and that sport is a unifying thing and not a divisional thing, because I see it myself coaching. You have athletes turning up and I can't coach them because they're overtrained. So you know, often then it's just back to technique. So I'm going off topic here.
Yeah, that's okay. It's a very interesting topic, and I'm just mindful of the time of everybody. But just to pull it back a little bit to high performance, high jump training and preparations, Alex, I was reflecting on what we talked about this evening, and you know what direction we're going with these whole Zoom chats in general. And I was thinking, you know, if you could consider 3 or 4 critical qualities or most important criteria for a high performance athletics coach, and then also think of 3 or 4 major obstacles to the progress of an elite athlete to the next level, to championship level, what would the qualities be for a high performing coach?
Good question.
And the obstacles for the athlete then in turn.
All right, I'll see what comes out of my mind. So I think as a coach, so speaking for myself, for whatever reason, I decided that I wanted to be a high performance or a professional coach very early in my career. So whatever the circumstances were that arose that caused me to decide that, I don't know, but I made that decision and I set my life up to make that possible. So I think if you are wanting to be a high performance coach, then it is a lifestyle, and you have to give yourself the time to be able to do it. Because again, I'm just speaking for myself in that my day is high jump. My day is track and field. From the time that I wake up and the time that I go to sleep.
Fantastic.
It's track and field and 98% high jump. Yeah, so you need to give yourself time, and that time is also fair to the athletes. So if you don't have the time, then don't take on a high performance athlete.
I would say there's very few people in Ireland who have that time or could do it partly because of that professional discussion we just had earlier. There's just the whole money thing, the culture isn't there to support coaches like yourself. So I think personally, I'd be very supportive of a transition towards professional high performance training as distinct from juveniles or juniors.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible here in terms of you can get coaching work within private schools quite easily. And so you can find yourself work at maybe a boys' school and a girls' school, and the pay is usually around 40 to 50 Australian dollars per hour. What that equates to, I don't know for you guys.
About 30 euro an hour, I guess.
Yeah. Which is not too bad when you can consider with most schools you can probably do anywhere from 5 to 8 sessions per week, and they will usually pay you for a minimum of 2 hours. And then when it comes into the height of their season, there'll be one competition per week, which will run for about 6 to 7 hours on a Saturday. And say that season might run for a duration of about 6 to 8 weeks. So if you have that as one source of income as a coach, that's okay. And then you can establish your own group where you can charge your own fee on top of that. So it is possible. It's not easy, but it's possible. And that's how I started to earn money as a coach. And it was a long, hard struggle to get to the point where only in the last probably 3 to 4 years to earn an amount which I'd say is reasonable.
Terrific. And can I ask you about learning, Alex? I mean, where do you go for your own professional development to make you a better coach? I mean, what resources do you use to educate yourself, or is it an ongoing commitment to learn about your discipline?
Well, the commitment is ongoing. And so we talked a little bit about this evening at the track. The first coach that I ever sought out for advice was Faz Ahmed.
There you go, guys. You're already ahead of the curve.
Yeah. And for any coach in almost any sport, I would say he is worthwhile to spend time with, purely for his incredible abilities as a communicator. And the guy also has just a phenomenal understanding of general movement.
Pretty good dancer too.
I have not seen him dance, but
get a couple of pints of Guinness in him.
Next time we're together, I'll request to see a few moves.
Well, I'm sure many people in this group would have witnessed Fuzz's work at workshops and various events in Ireland. Anyone want to talk about that experience? Did you learn anything, or would you agree with Alex?
Oh.
Don't worry, this is not being recorded.
Yeah, I've seen Fuzz. It is being recorded. I've seen Fuzz present, and yeah, he's a very good communicator. His acting skills kick in rightly, and you need to be thick-skinned. But then, if you're trying to be a high-performance athlete and you're not thick-skinned, you're in the wrong area too. He says it the way it is, and just like you said, Alex, he was taking a high jump session, but he actually went into basic movements on running technique and approaching the bar. That's where most of the time spent.
Alex, Paul was an Olympian in Sydney 2000 and a bronze medalist in the World Indoors 400 meters. And he works.
I picked the username straight away.
There you are. And he does a bit of work as a regional, what's it called? Regional
development officer.
That's it.
Yeah.
So
part of the reason why I sought Fuzz out is kind of early in my career, when I decided that, you know, being a high performance coach is what I wanted to do. Is the simple approach I took to it was, okay, if I want to coach someone who's going to win an Olympic gold medal or win a world championship gold medal, then I've got to know what that end product looks like. So I've got to find who the best people are, and I've got to find out what their daily training environment looks like, what the coach looks like, what the communication looks like, so on and so forth. So I looked at my accessible options, and he was the one that I sought out. Somebody else who we also sought out was Alexei Dimitric. So he was somebody who I thought of the 240 jumpers that were going around, who was probably the most appropriate model for Brandon. And that just occurred from reaching out via Facebook.
Wow.
So I reached out to his coach at the time, who is his wife, was his wife, depending on how you want to phrase it. And we went and did a 2-week training camp with them in Finland.
Oh, wow.
Which was quite cool. Another person who I sought out was Nelio Mura. Does everybody know Nelio? So Brazilian jumps coach, who is the only coach to coach the men's and women's Olympic champion in the same event at the same Olympic Games.
Wow.
And that was the men's and women's long jump at the Beijing Olympic Games. So he coached Irving Saladino and Morin Maggi.
Mm-hmm. And you found these guys approachable, Alex?
So I went to I had some funding to go to a conference which was run by the Canadian Athletics Coaching Group, which I don't think still exists. But for a while, they were running several specific event group conferences per year. And there was a jumps conference coming up, and there was a number of outstanding presenters, and one of those was Nelio. So when I went to the conference, I approached him and said, look, been a long time fan of your work, and I'd love to be able to come and spend some time with you and your group, if that's possible. And he said, sure, no problem, you're welcome anytime. So I was able to then access some more funding to go and spend about 10 days with him and his group in Sao Paulo. So that's how I approached kind of my initial learning, was find the people who are doing the best consistently, not just with kind of one-offs and outliers, but people who are able to produce high-level athletes time in, time out. And yeah, just got to see what they were doing, ask questions, got to know them as people, which is as big a part of the learning process as any, in my opinion. As I could say that everybody who I sought out to learn from, I would now class as a very good friend as well.
Terrific.
And that's because I believe that the kind of the mentor-mentee relationship should be quite equal in ways that information are exchanged. And I think there's too many times when people go to seek information from people and they don't really contribute anything back. Even as much to say as like, well, I tried that and it worked really well, or I tried that and it wasn't really working, so we tweaked it and that worked better for us. You know, that kind of stuff can prove as useful for the person you sought information from.
That's a good point.
As it can for you in terms of learning whatever they've done.
And we touched on it briefly this evening. It's a bit controversial, but I'll throw it in anyway. The idea of protectionism. It happens in the workforce. It happens with families, with children. And look, it's a bit of an elephant in the room, because we've all had experiences where we've developed great relationships with coaches. And then, of course, there's loyalty to coaches, and there's the whole ecosystem built around that training group. What is your take on a scenario where maybe an individual or coach has reached the ceiling of their ability, but yet there's a reluctance for either the athlete to move or the coach to kind of open them up to that kind of collaboration you're talking about? You'll be forgiven. It's a Saturday night. We won't remember any of this after tomorrow.
No. It's fine. It's I think it's a question that it's an answer that can take many forms, like depending on which perspective you take on.
Give us the difficult truth. We love difficult truth.
Well, I'll talk through the specific example that you and I discussed, because honestly, it's all the truth. It's all what happened. It's all what I did. And if anyone wants to say anything about it, then that's fine. They can say it.
Good story. Good story.
It is what it is. So the athlete in question we're talking about is Eleanor Patterson. And if anyone doesn't really know her history, I'll touch on it briefly, but she jumped 196 as a 17-year-old, which at the time was an equal world youth record. 196 in 2013. In 2014, she won the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow with 194. In 2015, she finished 8th at the World Championships in Beijing with 192. In 2016, she made the Olympic final in Rio again with maybe about 192. 2017, she kind of had a pretty quiet year. 2018, we had a home Commonwealth Games and she didn't qualify. Maybe had a season's best of 190 and jumped 187 or 188 at our selection trials from memory. And then after that, she pretty much fell off the radar. During those years, there was numerous times when she was offered quite significant financial support from our national federation. And by significant, I'm talking $30,000 straight into your bank account, which was declined. The basic requirement to receive that support is that the coach must submit an annual plan and have 2 meetings with the head coach throughout the course of the year. So over several years, that support was declined. Eleanor also grew up in the country, so about 1.5 hours to 2 hours outside of Melbourne, and pretty much did all her training there. And she was quite secluded, and her coach kept her hidden. Was very reluctant to engage with any other coaches. And, you know, to the point even where we'd be on national team camps and they'd either train at 7 a.m. in the morning or they'd train at 9 p.m. at night to avoid having to use the track at the same time as other people.
It's a rhetorical question, but why do you think that happens?
I can only suspect it's ignorance or fear.
Mm-hmm. Ego, possibly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
There's obviously very close relationships as well. So you've got this kind of family vibe sometimes with coaching, with training groups, which it's understandable to an extent that, you know, people are very protective. Maybe they've had a bad experience in the past. I guess every circumstance is different, but I think what we agree on, Alex, on that point is that it can be stifling. It can be restrictive if you step outside that bubble and look at the bigger picture and think, oh my God, how hard is it to jump 2 meters? As a woman, how hard is it to survive international competition, make those championship finals? It's, you know, you're not really competing against domestic coaches or rivalry amongst clubs. You're competing against standards. And I mean, to not open yourself up to that, in my view, and again, I think we agree on this, is it's short-sighted at the very least.
What's surprising about that sort of jump in, that story with Eleanor there was that, you know, the coach was almost offered support. You know, the athlete was getting money. It was a case of, you know, all we need from you is just a report every 2 years in a meeting. I think that a lot of people have jumped at that. So it seems quite a remarkable scenario that was going on here. I wasn't aware that wasn't like you went in there and said, right, we're taking her away from you now. That's it. So there seemed to be some sort of support in there. So that was that's quite a remarkable story. So
Stephen, building on that, Sotomayor mentioned, and again it was a language barrier, but he mentioned that centralized coordination of training, and he mentioned that they had that system as well, that you reported everything. And I get the impression, maybe it was the communist cultural thing, that everything was taken care of from head office, and it didn't matter if you had a parochial coach who brought you to X level of success. You agreed, you signed up to the centralized system. A lot of people don't agree with that, but it obviously worked for some of the best Cuban athletes particularly in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, well, I mean, no one was trying to impose on anything on them. It was just purely saying, if you want help, tell us what you want help with, and we'll give it to you.
If that was the federation, or was it yourself?
No, that was the federation. So I'll get to the next part of the story.
Go for it.
which is really the relevant part, based on your question. So got to the point where she'd pretty much done nothing. And as I told Anton earlier, I was actually in Eberstadt in Germany, if everyone knows the famous high jump competition.
High jump to music.
Yes. Having a conversation with Fuzz, who was flat out on his back on his bed because he had a back spasm and wasn't actually able to go out to the venue to coach Morgan Lake, who was at the competition. So I had to fill in for him that day. And so we were there discussing the comp, and Eleanor's name come up. And I was explaining the scenario to him that I just explained to you. And he said, well, what are you doing? Why don't you just reach out to her and get her to come and spend time with you and see what's going on? And I explained to him that I was a little apprehensive to do that because, you know, here that's absolutely not on. You don't approach other people's athletes. And I was really not up for the backlash if I got found out for doing it. And he said, well, she's on the decline. So if you get found out and you get slapped on the wrist, then who cares? Just do it.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's a paranoia being getting found out, even that language. I mean, I think it's fair game if your motives are sincere and genuine and for the better interests, and not just of the athlete, but of the, I mean, you're representing the country, right? So you're actually, I mean, if you are one of the top coaches and you think you've got something to offer, a solution to one of the obstacles the athlete is facing, so what if you offer some help? I don't see it as cheating or infidelity. Some people call it poaching. I don't know. I think poaching is a lot more mischievous. I think your motives are a little bit more nefarious, for lack of a better word. But I think what you did was fair game. And it's a challenge everyone is faced with. I mean, my experience in Liverpool in the mid-90s, I had tremendous loyalty to Mike Holmes. I thought he was a great guy. I still do think he's a great guy. But I sometimes reflect back on the woulda, coulda, shoulda, and considered his option of finding another coach. And he was mature enough to say, Anton, it just doesn't work. Find another coach. And I thought that was in hindsight, I thought it was a very brave thing to do. At the time, I thought it was quite insulting. But my point is that you got to get out of your own ego bubble and you got to think big, because if you want to be top 10 in the world or top 20, you just got to get out of that parochial thinking. And yeah,
good.
It's a very courageous thing to do.
Can we get back to Alex's story, Anton? Yeah,
shoot.
But I mean, so look, I reached out to her, and it was a very gentle approach to begin with, in terms of she would post something on social media and I would just send her a message and say, oh, I hope your training's going well. Looking forward to watching you compete. And we weren't complete strangers at that point. We knew each other a little bit, but we didn't really have much background. And so we just kind of struck up a relationship that way. And it got to the point where she just admitted on her own that she'd stopped training, and she wasn't in a coach athlete relationship with her previous coach. She was essentially at the point of quitting the sport. And so I just said, look, you're a finalist at the previous Olympic Games. At the time when we started to speak, she was 22 years old. There's no reason that come Tokyo, you shouldn't be in the final again. So what can we do about that? Which led to her deciding to come up and spend a week with my group. And she spent a week, and literally as soon as she got home from that first week, she rang me up and said, when can I come back? And then so a few weeks later, she came up for 2 weeks, and things started to go better and better. And at the end of the 2 weeks, she said, I'm going to move to Sydney. So she moved June of 2019. And from that point, she was, I would say, I didn't get a 196 high jumper. I probably got a 180 high jumper at that time. I got a 180 high jumper who had no confidence in herself, who had been misinformed about the world of track and field, who had and still has a lot of mental demons, and yeah, she wasn't the girl that she was. And so over time, we got her to 199, but there's still a lot of holes to fill in. And I think while I think she's going to do well in Tokyo, and if everything goes well in the next few months, if she can jump to her potential for now, then I think she can contend for a medal. No problem. I think she can even contend for a gold if things go to plan. But I think it'll take probably until Paris, until she's really good.
Which will be 2 years with yourself. That'd be 2 years. What were the big changes you made in terms of her conditioning?
Training for high jump,
yeah,
and not AFL.
Oh, right. Okay, that's interesting.
So basically, she used to train as a football player and then do high jump.
Wow.
So I remember the first time I asked her to do a lunge. She lunged, and the only part of her foot that was touching the ground were her toes. Okay, well, let's try it with your heel hitting the ground first. Completely new concept. And no surprises that when I said, can you bound for me? The only thing that touched the ground was her toes. Okay, so let's put the heel down. It was just generally lots of poor technique and a lot of things that were not specific to track and field. But the great thing was, and probably why she's as good as she is that she could make almost every change that I asked her to make very quickly.
Terrific.
She is exceptional in that way, in terms of, say, can you do this drill? And Brandon, can you show her the drill? Yep. Okay, within 1 or 2 attempts, she can do it.
Alex there, just sorry for cutting in, just when you got her, because I used to watch a lot of videos back in the day of Eleanor, and she had a very, she came in, her hand to drive up was, I suppose, a kind of a feature of her jump. What I can remember her starting, she used to be kind of getting into the zone and then kind of move down and have this kind of unique arm shift. Does she still have that, or is that something to work on?
No, yeah. She does still have it. And it was one of the first things that I thought about when I started to work with her. And I questioned whether I would do anything about it at all. Because I decided, I thought if we decided to try and get rid of it, that it could cause more problems. Because she'd done it forever. I've seen videos from when she jumped when she was 11, 12 years old, and she did it then. So in the end, I decided to do nothing about it. We have no conversations about it. It's never been mentioned.
Can I put in there as well?
Sure.
Because Stefan Holm reflected on that when he said that at one point he tried to put in a double arm shift. And he said for him it wasn't working. And I know that's something that me and my coach have sort of played with, trying to incorporate the double arm shift, but we've finally agreed that that wouldn't work for me, just because whenever I try it, I slow down, and you sort of get to a point where you decide, is it worth changing it? Or do you just stick with what you know?
I 100% agree. And I mean, you start to look at double arm shift, and it does offer you a lot of advantages. But so does a single arm takeoff, offers you just as many. So ultimately you decide what's better. And I think quite often too many people spend too long on trying to work on things that they think should occur when there's not really any major problem in the first place.
Can I jump in there as Pippa's coach? I think the mechanics of the arm is probably, the arms is one of the things you shouldn't worry about too much in terms of a technical model, because there are so many differences with the way people use their arms and jumping. And I think that it's so hardwired in, and changing it is a problem. And we certainly tried to change it, but it was a waste of time. And I think reflecting on that, it seems to me, as I say, part of that technical model, it's one thing that matters the least, I think. And there are far more important things to spend your time on. So that was our journey there.
Yeah, well, I think there's certainly no problem in trying stuff. Absolutely, like, and I've done it. You know, an example that I can think of is with Brandon when he was about 19. He was quite toey on his penultimate, so we spent a couple of months trying to flatten the penultimate out. You know, even going so far as to try and get it heel to toe, as I really took it. I didn't think he was ever going to get there to the point that he could do it, but because, considering how toey he was at the time, I tried to take it to the most extreme point away to get the middle ground that I wanted. And we couldn't get there. We couldn't get there. It just broke everything else. So, okay, we tried, didn't work, let's move on. And strangely, very, very strangely, so I never mentioned it again. I thought that's just a fail point. We're not going to do it. Not going to happen. Through COVID times, and with the Olympics being cancelled, we just kind of came to this point where we said, you know what, we've got no pressure of meets. The Olympics is ages away. Let's just try some stuff and see what happens, because we've got a real opportunity just to learn some stuff here, purely by experimentation with no pressure. And he actually said, you know what, I think it'll be really beneficial if I start to think about trying to get my right foot down flatter. Yeah. Yep. Well, I remember this conversation when you were 19 years old. And maybe this just, he's ready for it now. I don't know. Maybe his skill level is better now and it's more appropriate to being able to execute that. I don't know.
Alex, can I direct the conversation to the gym work? What's happened with strength? Is there anything particularly special you do with these kind of elite championship jumpers that, yeah, juveniles, juniors wouldn't do?
So I'll just basically describe our gym sessions for you. So pretty typical warm up, 10 minutes of cardio, whatever they want to do. I really don't care. They can choose. They can jump on the bike, they can jog, they can skip, they can anything. We do some hip mobility stuff, and you know, I might include so the hip mobility, there's 4 exercises we typically use, around 10 to 15 repetitions of each, which I can send the videos to anyone that wants them. So just flick me a message and I'll send them through. But actually quite good. also for mobility and also for general hip conditioning. We might do some stuff like some handstand holds or some maybe some split squats on BOSU balls or instability pads. So that's generally what the warm up involves. Eleanor specifically has had ongoing issues throughout her career with kind of patellar tendonitis issues. So we do some single leg squat iso holds before she moves on to any of her lifting. So depending on the time of the year, we'll do maybe, we always do 2 sets and do 5 reps, and we might go up to 8 to 10 seconds on about 60 to 70 kilos on what I'd say is, it's not a half squat position, it's not a quarter squat, probably like a third squat type hold, but it's the point where she feels the appropriate tension on her patella tendon. In season, we might go down to about 2 sets of 5 by 3 seconds. One day will be snatch and step ups. I like to do snatch with a split catch. Just my personal preference. I believe it's a little bit more relevant to track and field, but I don't have a weightlifting background, so that's just purely on my feeling. We also do narrow grip on snatch, because I've had a few people who have had shoulder issues with a wider grip snatch, and I had nobody that had any issue with a narrow grip. So, and they actually all prefer it because they feel like they can move the bar faster. So happy days. Narrow grip split snatch it is. And typically I like to lift more from the floor rather than hang. My philosophy with Olympic style lifting is to try and move through the greatest range possible at the greatest speed possible. So
that's interesting, because Stefan Holm talked about doing deep squats, ass to the grass, quote unquote. And that blew me away, because Mike Holmes in Liverpool was all about quarter squat. I think Brendan Riley would agree. 90 degrees, very most, half squat parallel, early season. What's your view on that? You usually about full range. What kind of weights? I mean, do you mind just sharing what kind of intensity?
So it doesn't, that theory doesn't carry over to squatting for me. Okay. If I'm talking, I'll talk, so snatch, single arm snatch, cleans, I'll very, very rarely lift from hang. I've had some athletes that have come from environments where they prefer it. They have a greater affinity with that exercise, so we do that.
Do you use a specialist strength and conditioning coach, or is it all on your own shoulders, Alex?
I write all of their S&C programs.
Wow, that's interesting.
So yeah, so typically we will put snatch and step ups together on one day, and the other day will be clean and squat. Weights, Brandon, for example, he's not, well, in some regards he's strong, others he's not. He's cleaned 100 kilos from the floor for 1 rep.
Terrific.
95 for 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if anyone's done narrow grip snatch, but it is actually harder to lift heavier.
Paul, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, well, the bar has to travel further with a narrow grip. So yeah, I would agree. It's going to be a bit harder, but the benefits he says, and they're all happy with it, there's definitely no issue with that.
Yeah. So I think, so Brandon's done 65 kilos for 1. But to be honest, we really don't spend a lot of time searching for 1 RMs in the lifts either. So we've just come out of probably through January, we did a block of like where we'd be doing 8 sets of 2 and trying to sit in what would be probably like an 80% of a 1 RM type weight, and then trying to move that weight faster 16 times rather than getting stuck in the pattern of just grinding out weights. And typically,
Barry, sorry, I was going to ask Barry here, but Barry's a 226 jumper, multiple Irish champion. What was your view on the gym work in Wales? And did you feel that you had to be in the UK to educate yourself about the strength work? I know it's different now, but back then, you know, what was the strength setup like? Did you have to find a different coach for that kind of expertise, or did your jumps coach help you with that also? Barry Pender.
They did everything. Jumps coach did everything, which is nice if they have the knowledge, I think, because they can build it in within the entire plan. But then I think to have an athlete do that, the athlete needs to be quite robust already. Like if there's any issues, you do kind of need specialist S&C to balance up, I suppose, before you start loading. Because I think a lot of my problems probably came from the gym injury-wise.
Oh, right. That's very interesting.
In terms of like, I was quite strong naturally, so I obviously added a lot of load onto things and added a lot of strength and power onto bad form or little instabilities that probably weren't there when I was not as strong, but as I got stronger, the instabilities came more and more to the front.
Stephen, have you any comments on that? Because I know Pippa and you were probably in the gym also.
Yeah, for me, I have a very strong interest in S&C, so I'd always want to be involved, and I program Pippa, and that's been a long journey for us, and the changes that I put in. Alex mentioned about speed. We lift to velocity, we measure velocity, we don't lift to 1 RMs anymore. And I found that made a massive difference when, I wouldn't say Pippa really plateaued, but you know, working, her 1 RM wasn't going up. We started to velocity-based lifting, and it was amazing, the differences. And I think that she'd probably recognize that too. So we lift to speeds. One thing I want to ask Alex, do you do any contrast stuff? Do you mix in plyometrics with your lifting at all?
Yeah, so I do. So typically, so what we do, say if it's a snatch step up day, then I would probably leave the snatch on its own. Through kind of specific prep, when we do step ups, we would do, so specific prep for the most part, we do step up on a 30 centimeter box. And just FYI, I don't get my guys to do a knee drive on a step up. For me, the focus of the step up is knee extension and hip extension. So, and I just don't see, personally, I don't see the point. So we'll do do 30 centimeter step up, which say, for example, Brandon can do, if we do 2s or 3s, he's around 160 kilos, 165 kilos on both legs. And then we will do a drop and hold, a single leg drop and hold. So we might do, so say that the step ups is 3 reps each leg. So we do those single leg drop and hold off the 30 centimeter box with a 20 kilo bar. So which might be 3 to 5 reps on each leg. And then we might go and do something like a single leg med ball throw up. And again, something like 3 to 5 reps. And typically that whole group will be 3 to 5 sets.
Sure. Yeah. We kind of do similar things, and I think that doing an exercise that's similar to the lift is clearly useful in terms of crossover and carryover. So yeah, and I think again, I recommend that kind of mix for people who are in the gym, just to start using those plyometric activities, because I think it seems to make quite a big effect. I think with athletes, I've certainly found that. So it's reassuring to know I'm doing similar things to you, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's beneficial to do some similar activities to create some contrast, but I'm also always conscious of, you know, not putting in too much plyo load. I mean, my personal preference is to kind of keep that for the track. It's not to say we don't do it. It's just probably not heavily emphasized in the gym. So yeah, so typically we'll do, say, whether it's sort of be snatch, step up, and either clean or squat. So squat, we might do something pretty unexciting like body weight squat jumps after, or ankle jumps or pogo jumps or whatever you want to call them, or a double leg medicine ball throw up, something to that effect. Again, just very similar nature. Depending on the time of the year, then it's either more reactive or more maybe strength based.
I asked Alex, how far away from the season would you scale down your weight training? And if it's a long season, let's imagine, I don't know, 10 weeks, how do you top up your strength without taking the pop out of their legs?
Okay. So I'll get through the rest of the program and then I'll come back to that.
Sorry.
No, just so I can get there, and then otherwise we might not get there. Sure. So then typically we'll do something like there'll be an eccentric quad exercise. So that might be in the form of an eccentric leg extension or a, does anyone know what reverse Nordics are? So for anyone that doesn't know a reverse Nordic, so if you kneel down and essentially with your toes pointed behind you, try to keep your body in a straight line from a knee to your shoulder. And then you'll try to keep that straight line and lean back. And so you can either do it on it just purely on an eccentric emphasis, or you can Nordic, as in, yeah. So you can do it purely on eccentric, or you can do the eccentric and the concentric together. But probably 90% of the time we work on the eccentric side. We've got a few different variations on that. Again, if anyone wants to see them, I'm happy to share the videos. So we'll do reverse eccentric quad. We'll do an eccentric hamstring exercise. So that might occur in the form of a Nordic or a Russian hamstring, or whatever you want to call it. Might be something like a single leg slide kind of thing, you know, with some kind of pad that will slide on whatever surface, or a single leg back extension with so again, all these have got just variations on either with or without weights, or different hand positions we've experimented with. Another one I forgot to mention with the eccentric quad is, does anyone know Spanish squats? So
Oh, I don't know Spanish squats. Just possibly,
yeah.
So very different than the Irish squat. Paul can tell you about the Irish squat, but go on. I've heard of Bulgarian squats we were talking about this morning in the gym. Just
but so Spanish squats, yeah, awesome for patella tendon injury prevention, strength. You know, great for quad strength. But we might do it with the boys can do it with 10 kilo plate across their chest. Eleanor will typically do 5 kilos, or sometimes we do it no weight, but we'll have an arm fully extended as we go back. Even has anyone heard of Joseph Coyne?
No, actually, our club secretary just asked me just this second. WhatsApp me to do.
Does anyone know Joseph Coyne?
No.
So he's a New Zealander, and he's a strength and conditioning coach, and he worked in China for a long time, essentially as Randy Huntington's assistant. So Randy Huntington being coach of Mike Powell. And so Joseph and I had a mutual friend. And so we met, and over the last few years, we've exchanged various ideas. I recommend if anybody uses Instagram to look him up, and he's got some great content.
Joseph Coyne, Coyne, is it?
Correct.
Cool. Yeah, we'll check him out. Yeah.
Yeah, but we struck up a friendship, and we will often exchange ideas. And one idea that he gave me was either with the Spanish squats or with the reverse Nordics, is to push the athlete, which is quite tough for the athlete to do. So they have to, like, you're working the eccentric and the concentric, but just it's another variation that we use. So again, happy to share with anyone.
A similar one, Alex, I would have used there would have been, when you're in the half in the Nordic position from the glute ham, just drop the barbell, but you catch it straight away, just to get that.
Yeah,
just a slight variation,
Yeah. Just, so
you were saying earlier, when you're giving, it's good to give a bit back,
Yeah. No, I like it.
If you need subtitles for that, Alex, just let us know. We can arrange a translator.
I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit shaky earlier.
That's all right. He's working on his English. We have tuition organized.
So eccentric quad, eccentric hamstring, usually always something for the back in there as well. Depends on how I feel at whatever time of year it is as to what that back exercise will be. Then we will always do an isometric calf exercise. And so the two that we most typically use are, so it's essentially like the top position of a calf raise using a Smith machine. And depending on the time of the year, that'll be, so early season, it'll be something like 2 sets of 5 by 8 seconds each side. And coming into season, it'll be about 2 sets of 5 by 3 seconds each side. And or the other one we do is in a leg press, where in the leg press, we can kind of really ramp up the weight a bit. So Brandon can do like an iso hold for his calf in the leg press at about 250 kilos.
Wow.
And that's making sure that you have like a good heel raise off the platform as well. And that's one leg. And then we'll combine the iso calf with something a little bit more dynamic, like some kind of like ankling with a barbell, or some kind of just small jumps, or and then we'll always work something in the dorsiflexion side of things as well, and that kind of comprises a general gym session. So to kind of get on to what Anton was asking before about how I progress it through the season, it's basically general prep is a lot of body weight, a lot of circuit stuff. To be honest, we don't lift a lot in general prep. Specific prep and my general prep only lasts maximum 4 weeks, never longer. But that's probably more relevant to older athletes as well. Definitely younger ones, you need to go a little bit longer. So general prep, 4 weeks, only one per season. The initial specific prep will be the longest of the season. Depending on where the major championship sits in the year, it might be something like major championship, domestic calendar. For us, Asian calendar is a consideration as well. But the first specific prep might be something like 12 to 18 weeks. And then so we'll go through a phase of lifting on the heavier side. So as I said earlier, we don't really like push for the heavy weights anymore, but for the purpose of this, lifting on the heavier side, so typically in kind of 80-90% type ranges, and get to the point. Pure for me, it's really based on feel and numbers I'm seeing and movements I'm seeing, and also what's going on the track. Then we get to a point where the lifting will become maybe about 6 weeks before the first comp, where depending on the lift, it typically might be 30 to 60% of max, if you like. So really not much weight at all, but looking just at bar speed. Let's move it as quick as you can. And so like one of the changes that will occur in that time as well is the 30 centimeter step up that I mentioned earlier will drop to a 20. And we can actually get some significantly heavier weights at some pretty good speed as well. With the men, once you go into that lighter, kind of faster period of lifting, I find that once every 3 weeks, if you touch on something a little bit heavier, it's enough to maintain it. Like some of them can go maybe as far out as 4 weeks. Women, probably every 2 weeks. And it can be maybe one session is enough, but you don't need to go too deep into it, but it could be something like 2 to 3 sets of 2 reps of 2 exercises could be enough just to top it up and get the stimulus. Yeah, if that answers your question.
Absolutely, that's great. Look, going out on a limb here a little bit, I suspect there's probably 5 or 6 people who can really relate to a lot of the work you're talking about there. But again, I might be cheeky saying this, but I reckon that the intensity of the gym work, the strength and conditioning, is a new language for a lot of people making that transition from junior to senior. And certainly, in my experience, it was a shock to me, the intensity of the work that was done in a gym. And obviously in Ireland, they can't even access a gym now for the past 12 months. So it's particularly demanding. And what would you say to people who have no idea, who just think, oh my God, what kind of language are you talking about there? Where could they access this kind of information? I mean, beyond the formal accreditation, coaching accreditation, where could they seek out guidance on relevant high jump strength training?
Well, you can seek out your better coaches. And so I talked about, so the people I sought out, how receptive they were to me reaching out. That's available to anybody. Just send a message. If you want to know something, find somebody and send a message. You'd be surprised at the response you'll get. I've actually never had anyone not respond. Yeah, so seek out your better coaches and ask them. You haven't done anything wrong by asking a question.
Yeah, it's a
Alex,
good attitude.
Can I ask a question there? What did you learn the most from speaking out with Fuzz, with that guy from Brazil and Alexi and those? What was there commonalities between them all, or did some bring different knowledge or open your eyes a bit more?
There were commonalities in types of training that were done. But so what did I pick up? I mean, Fuzz, we already talked about the communication abilities. I think he's outstanding in that regard. And the other thing which he's really great at is rhythms. And as obvious as you might think it is, that there's not a lot of people that that really discuss or understand rhythms the way that he does. So I feel fortunate to be able to have learned that from him. And I think we'll discuss rhythm of whatever exercise on a daily basis. You know, every exercise has an appropriate rhythm, and if the appropriate rhythm occurs, then generally the right technical process has occurred to obtain that rhythm. So that's so from Foz, there was that. From Nelio, I probably learned the most in terms of his periodization. So one thing that Nelio believes in is triple, or depending on the structure of the year from a competition perspective, is maybe even like a quadruple periodized year. But typically he'll go with the triple periodized years, because to try and get like essentially like an oscillating effect from the training.
Just coming in there in periodization, John Shepherd gave a great talk a couple of weeks ago on undulating periodization, particularly for the horizontal jumps.
And
yeah, maybe there about
undulating, oscillating.
Yeah.
Same.
Would you be a fan of that for the high jump?
Yes.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah,
yes.
because it seems it ties in well for field events and generally speaking, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So typically I will, so we'll only have one general prep phase in a year ever. But there'll be three specific preps and 3 comp phases.
Great, thanks. I don't have to ask John that question now. You've answered it for me.
And then from Alexei and his coach Katya, I mean, the real thing was looking at some. It was really just seeing what a 240 product looked like. To be honest, I don't think they didn't do a lot special. To me, it was a lot of simple things done very, very well, and done for long periods of time, you know, done for years back to back, and just becoming very, very good at them.
That sounds exactly like Stefan Holm's formula.
And can I throw out a question there? This is something that some of us coaches have been talking about. I must put them up. I sent videos of the Ukraine under 14, under 16 championships. And if you look at the statistics across Europe, I'd say that age group, we're there in Ireland, but where we fall down is at the higher level. And we were here in Ireland, we promote doing combined events for juvenile athletes. But listening to others, listening to Stefan talking about his son Melvin and a few others. What do you think, Alex, about, because high jump is a specific event. To me, it's like surfing. You get hooked. I got hooked. I see other athletes now, they get hooked on high jump. They don't want to do any other event. Would you say using an undulating periodization model and letting them jump, not forcing them to do combined events or other events, to have that specialization from a younger age if they want it? What do you think?
Well, so I believe that specialization comes through not specializing. if you prefer, if you like, and by that, I'm a believer in the multi-event approach, because it gives an amazing reference point for the athlete later in their career. I believe in multi-event. I believe in multi-sport for kids. But within that, if the kids like high jump, then let them high jump. Because the reason that most kids do sport is because they like it. And they like to compete. So give them the thing that they like, and then put all the other stuff in beneath it or around it. But the thing that I see too often in Australia is kids that just do high jump, and they do a lot of high jump because they like it and because the coach lets them high jump, but they can't do anything else. So what do? We high jump.
Yeah, what concerns me as well is that there's this overemphasis on competition, Alex. Even my 8-year-old daughter, she was at little athletics on Friday night. And the structure of little athletics is they rock up and they compete at high jump, compete at 70 meters, 100 meters, 400 meters. And there's no warm up. I mean, in the group, oh God, I gotta be careful here what I say, but it's fun for these guys. They like a bit of competition, but I'm just trying to imagine if you start at 6, 7, 8 years of age and you rock up to training every once a week or twice a week and you just compete. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the ideal approach. Whereas I'd much prefer if they did more rounded kind of fundamentals of movement, speed, strength, fitness, without the competitive element, certainly for under 13s, anything below under 13. I think Stefan made that point as well. They don't really compete until they're teenagers.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, no, well, I agree on that front. But the thing I see here, and particularly with young teenagers that you get, is they've just done high jump, like I said, high jump. Oh, okay, I've stagnated. How do I get better? Oh, I need to lift weights. So now I'm going to lift a lot of weights and I'm going to do high jump. And so it's high jump, weights. Oh, I've stagnated again. What do I do now? I lift more weights and I high jump more. Oh, now I'm broken. What do I do? And I don't know what to do because I actually can't do anything else. And then from that point, there is either no road back or it's a very long road back.
And it's just to jump in there again, Alex, it's good to get away from the high jump too, because it is a very mentally intensive event, you know, and like what Anton did, he moved away from the high jump and went to Paul's event, the 400 meters, you know, just to let go. Yeah.
That was the death of me, actually.
That's just madness.
You'll find when Anton hit hurdle 7 or 8, he was still doing the high jump, but that's for another day.
Yeah, that's for another one.
Yeah, I mean, I like the other interesting thing here that I'm experiencing more and more every year is I have kids that'll come and say, can you coach me for high jump? Yeah, I can. Okay, so what days do you do high jump on?
Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it?
Well, I don't know what day. It really depends on the time of year, but we don't always just do high jump. We do a bunch of stuff. Oh, well, I go with my running coach on this day, and I go with my hurdles coach on this day. And well, first of all, I go, well, why doesn't your hurdles coach running? There's the increasing culture here that you have different coaches for everything. Part of coaching high jump is coaching running and coaching hurdles, and you must have a basic knowledge of how to hurdle, how to throw, how to sprint, how to do long jump, how to do triple jump, and they're all integral parts of young athletes' development.
I've definitely sensed that, Alex, that the rhetoric seems to be, even on this jumps forum, and this is in full respect to everyone involved, is that there's an overemphasis on the actual jump, whereas I might be wrong on this, and I'm open to debate. I feel that the plyometrics, the conditioning, the training, the holistic training as the complete athlete is essential as a priority. And I almost feel to the extent that you could take a whole season, 9, 10 months of not jumping, high jumping at all, and still potentially improve your personal best purely based on your conditioning prep. That's a bit extreme, I know, but it's just very, very much a counter to all the questions being about high jump technique. Whereas, I mean, Sotomayor didn't have the perfect technique. Barshim doesn't have the perfect technique. Adrian O'Dwyer, the Irish record holder, 230, had, in my opinion, an appalling technique. So there's lots of examples of poor techniques where, you know, when they put their foot down, it's the pogo stick, it's their elastic strength is phenomenal. So personally, I might be wrong. I don't believe the technique is as important as many people think it is.
It was interesting. Sorry, Alex. It was interesting just to add on to his point there, and you can add then see the thing. Deirdre brought up last week, conditioning, definitely yes, before you even start. But she said that you can get an awful lot out of functional conditioning, i.e. it's different to doing in the weight rooms, the actual the functional jumping side that's conditioning the body too. So that's just interesting from our talk last week. So Alex, I wonder what you think of that. Is it just pure all the gym, or do you have to jump as well to get that actual functional conditioning?
Oh, you do. There has to be the specific side of conditioning, no doubt. And so, however you want to look at this, but I think that world-class high jumpers, you should be able to do a session of about 20 jumps from a full approach at, sorry to use a vague term, but a reasonable height, and be able to jump those reasonable heights after 20 jumps. So for example, so Brandon can jump, he can do a session of jumps from a full approach, and he can jump 220 or 225 jumps, 18, 19, 20. We've even gone as high as 25. Definitely no higher than 25 jumps. That's probably the most specific form of conditioning.
Can I ask another question there? Do you do jumps, short approach jumps as well as a functional conditioning, 3 and 5 steps? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So,
do you do that often or at a specific time of the year?
So generally in general prep, we don't jump, no high jump at all. We probably, through specific prep, we'll start off with kind of various takeoff drills, over hurdles, 1 steps, 3 steps, 5 steps, straight line, curves, and always both legs. And probably by the time, I mean, actually I have different athletes who kind of, some will jump sooner than others. So Brandon doesn't need to jump a lot. He can actually find his rhythm pretty quickly. Eleanor needs to jump a little bit more. But then we'll start with stuff like kind of 3, 4, 5 stride scissors to the sandpit. Again, it's another famous fuzz exercise. So we'll start with that kind of stuff. And then we'll go to kind of, depending on the athlete, 4 or 5 strides, either from the flat or from a 10 centimeter box. And so the other thing that I tend to work concurrently with this is in terms of run-ups. So we'll start run-ups in week 1 of specific prep, but we'll do it with no mats, no uprights. So somewhere completely away from the fan, and we'll have some cones out, but it's a run-up. So we might spend 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks on that, depending on how things are going. Then we'll add in the uprights and the bar. Again, another 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how things are going. Then we add in the mat.
That's perfect for us now in lockdown.
Yeah,
that's perfect for us in lockdown.
So while we were pretty free during our lockdown time, there was a period when we couldn't access tracks. So we did a lot of our training on a synthetic football pitch. And we just did a lot of run-ups with, we had some hurdles which we just set up in places as the upright, and did a lot of run-ups that way.
Thank you, Alex. I'm very conscious.
Just a question on Alex there. Just, you know, because of, I suppose, before competition, what would your recommendation being as to, I suppose, quantity of jumps in? You know, let's say we're all conscious of the micro meets this term around, that nobody had very little jumping done. You know, would you kind of say, listen, you need to have 2 weeks jump sessions done before you're even thinking about doing a competition, or would you even say you need more? Or what is the minimum?
There is no answer to that.
Yeah.
Sorry, to be unspecific, it's all based on what you see at the track. And so what I want to see is repeatability. So if I can see repeatability pretty quickly, okay, let's compete. But as long as the competition at that time of year is kind of, it's appropriate, you know, we're not going to go into a major one that early. But yeah, some people take longer than others.
Mm-hmm. I guess where I'm coming from, Alex, is you know, let's say at a competition, people will give that extra bit. Okay. And I'm just trying to look for maybe some barometer or something like that, is that maybe that extra bit might blow the hinges off them. And I'd be fearful of doing more damage in a competition, because as a coach, we have to think for the athlete, because the athlete always wants to jump and jump higher. And sometimes I've had to pull athletes and say, no, you're not ready. Well, you're not jumping. You're not doing this competition. And I get the brunt of it. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking afterwards, maybe I should have, but you know.
So what I would say to that, so let's just assume that in training prior to doing any kind of competition, that your parameters that you're seeing within training are of a level where you'll entertain the idea of a competition. So whether that's your 30-meter sprint and your standing triple jump, your 10 bounds, and your overhead shot throw, or whatever short approach exercise you did at the time, as long as you're seeing some good parameters that go, okay, we can look at a comp. Depending on the time of year and what you're looking at, you then have the option to manipulate a whole bunch of variables. So competition doesn't always mean full run up. It can be whatever run up they're ready to execute at the time. And then you can use the competition to achieve whatever purpose you want to use it for. So if it's early and you still if you want to achieve some repeatability, or you want to work on the curve, or you want to work on whatever, start lower. Start at heights below what you would at your optimal. Take more jumps in the warm-up if you want to get the repetition of the jumps. Or if you want to kind of create some consequence and create some accountability to try and put some pressure on them to achieve something technically, limit the amount of jumps that they can take.
Good
okay.
Point.
You've got you've got 8 jumps today to give me this.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Alex.
I'm very conscious it's almost 11 o'clock, and Alex, you've been amazing. I'm also conscious before we finish up, there's probably
I'm good for as long as anyone wants to know anything.
Once the beer doesn't run out, it's a Saturday night here, we're allowed. Pippa, a big piece of my heart really wants you to succeed, and Summer and a few others, David, who are on the cutting edge. I'm a passionate supporter of you guys, even though I've never met you. Is there any other voices there who have any additional questions, maybe around injury management, because that was a topic, or even David, you asked me some questions by email. Do you want to jump in? David's our national champion, Alex, in the men's.
Yeah, I just have a question about the run up. So Brandon and Eleanor both have very fast run ups. So I was just wondering how you develop the speed in the run up, and how you kind of find the optimal speed that you can actually take off in the jump.
So basically, I'm not really in preference of speed, in terms of, or as opposed to being in preference for not having speed. It's not something I've really tried to do with either of them. It's just qualities that they both possessed, and it all came about purely by considering rhythm and how they run gives them the most appropriate rhythm to jump. that's kind of the best I
Did
can
I answer your question, David?
Yep.
Yeah, I watched you jump at the weekend online. Well done. How did you feel about it, by the way? What do you think is separating you from the kind of heights you had targeted or your goals and dreams? What challenges are you experiencing?
I think I was just a little bit kind of rusty. Didn't really, the atmosphere didn't really feel like competition, and kind of just, there was just kind of a lot of factors really that kind of played into it, like the heat of the indoor arena, the different kind of surface. My mark changed, obviously. Training versus competition mark kind of just didn't really feel ready for a competition. I guess I felt in good shape, but I just felt like I needed maybe 1-2 more competitions to.
Yeah. So this is the big obstacle in Ireland right now, the darn restrictions. I mean, you only had what, 1 or 2 competitions this whole indoor season, did you? I mean,
that was the only one.
There's sort of one competition, Alex. So part of the reason we're doing this is to try and inspire people and offer some kind of intellectual capital to the learning experience while they can't really do much on the track. It's quite shocking.
Yeah, well, so obviously it's, COVID's a very unique circumstance. Sorry, there's an alarm going off somewhere in my room and I don't know where it is. Yeah, it presents a purely unique set of circumstances to all of us, depending on where we're located around the world. And I don't think, any 2 countries are in exactly the same position. We were fortunate that we could access a track almost the whole time. So Anton knows this track, but we could actually get onto Barden Ridge for the whole time during COVID. It was never closed, and I know the president of the club, and he gave us a key for the high jump equipment.
I need to get a copy of that key, Alex.
The only issue is it's far from where everyone in my group lives. So none of us was really interested in driving 90 minutes each way to go to the track, just to use the track. So we only went there once a week.
I've got a spare bed if you want to stay over sometime.
No, I considered taking my passport sometimes. Yeah, so we use the track. The other time we'd use artificial turf fields. So the turf field we primarily used was actually an AFL field. So it had lots of circles kind of already marked on the field, circles and curves and whatnot. So, awesome, fantastic for high jump. So let's use this circle for a drill. Let's use that circle over there for a drill. So
I think that's a great message, Alex, just to improvise, to persevere, and to adapt to your circumstances.
Yeah, we even had a point where we couldn't get some like mats where in a location that was convenient for us locally, but we could get 2 old uprights and a bar. So we did some kind of like 1, 2, 3 stride scissor stuff on grass fields.
Wow.
So it was still high jump in some form. And what I wanted to do, kind of to keep the triple periodization of the year going, because I believe that was in kind of integral for the success of the next year, to keep that going as much as possible, is I did some mock competitions with Brandon. I didn't do it with Eleanor because she had an injury during that time in like second metatarsal in a non-takeoff foot. But Brandon wanted to compete, and he was still of a pretty good mindset. So we did some mock comps where we established the date that it was going to be on. We made a start time. We made a call room time, a couple of days before, I picked a set of progressions and sent him the progressions. And this is what we're going to do. And so we're fortunate that we have a biomechanist employed by Athletics Australia, and she will come out and film whenever we need her. And so we brought the biomechanist out and, you know, had all the filming done, and okay, we're going to take data on this, and we made it kind of as official as we possibly could. And so we did a few of those throughout the course of COVID, just to keep some stimulus going.
That's fantastic. Quick one, Alex. Double question here. Answer whichever you like. But there was an original question, which was, what obstacles do you think are the biggest barriers for making that progression to championships? But to kind of answer the question myself, injury. What happens when one of your athletes gets injured? And the second topic, which is different, nutrition. It's always a controversial, hot topic. Answer whichever one you like with the limited time we have.
Obstacles to getting to
championship standard, yeah. I mean, injury was the big one that came up with every session. And I kept thinking, I mean, in my mind, it was always, okay, you get injured, you blame yourself. But some of the time I'm thinking, well, sometimes it's not your fault. Maybe you're just not training properly. Maybe maybe the standard of therapy that's available to you isn't good enough. And I was very serious when I was competing that it was so important to find a high quality masseuse, a high quality physiotherapist. You know, all these people play an important part.
Obstacles to getting to a championship. That's a super tough question, and it's a really long answer.
Well, I actually had it answered myself, and I was interested in comparing notes. I mean, the three I put down were expertise, number one, injury, number two, and resourcefulness, number three. I mean, not everybody's resourceful. You know?
Well, what I was thinking about was, you know, so I considered all those points you just raised, but how far do we go back? How far are you looking at going back in terms of getting to a championship? Because
I'm thinking of Barry Pender here. I'm not trying to put Barry under pressure, but 226, worked his ass off, put in all the same effort as someone jumping 236, but he was that far off making a championship final. But yet,
so that probably gives us a bit more of a direct focus.
Yeah, no disrespect, Barry, but I think Barry should be just that bit more. Yeah.
So what we can say here is, so Barry, did you, or can you say today that you did every single thing within your capacity to make sure that you jumped the highest you possibly could?
That's a tough question.
No pressure.
I wouldn't regret anything, but
is it
slightly differently.
Is it a tough question because you don't want to answer it honestly, or?
No, I have no problem answering pretty honestly. I'm actually not quite sure. I always look back at it and I don't really regret anything, because then, like, I'm getting more and more involved in coaching now, and I think what my experiences as an athlete is more than that, hugely. Well, I don't really like to think my athlete's getting injured, so I try to avoid things that I would have liked to have done, if that makes sense. So if the biggest thing I would have liked is to have the same coaching at 25 at, say, 19 years of age when I just went to college. I think that would have made the biggest difference to me, rather than having a couple of years of stop-start, moving around, not really having. I didn't really have a high jump coach at 19 when I went to college properly. So I just moved away from my club setting, which was really, really good. I was well-rounded as an athlete then, but then trying to get more specific, I didn't quite have that at that age. I needed it. I think that's where a lot of my injuries came from. So
I'll kind of, in terms of to say do everything you can, I'll use myself as an example. I was a pretty average triple jumper. So I jumped 1595. Good. And I jumped 1595. I'm 175 centimeters tall, and if it was 32 degrees with a 2-meter tailwind and I got the perfect start, which was probably a false start, there's no way I could run faster than 1160 for 100.
Wow.
So I had access to very good coaches as a young athlete, which is probably a large part as to why I am the coach I am today, because I didn't really realize it at the time, but amongst the people I was coached by were Keith Connor. I assume everyone knows who Keith is.
Probably, possibly not, because of the Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere thing.
Well, Keith is British.
Oh, sorry.
Keith is British, 1982 Commonwealth Games champion in the triple jump, and has a PB of 1781.
Wow.
Well, 1781 windy, 1757 legal. I was also coached by Victor Senev. Do I need to explain?
Come on, guys, what's going on? You're not students of your sport.
Victor,
very aware of Victor.
Victor Senev, Olympic champion in the triple jump, 1968, 1972, 1976, and silver medalist in 1980, and voted as athlete of the decade in the 1970s.
I think we need to study the sport a bit more. It's a separate point, but I think you've hit on something important there. They're great guys to learn from.
Yeah. So, and then I was also coached. Well, I had not coached by, but helped a little bit by another guy called Vasily Grushenkov, who was a triple jumper who jumped 17 meters 55 in 1983.
Wow.
And also, and a brilliant coach. He actually coached Dmitry Markov in the pole vault when he jumped 605.
Wow.
So I had access to all these brilliant coaches. You know, some of them was when I was, you know, between the ages of 15, 16, 17, 18. So I didn't really know what was going on in my life. But then I got to a certain point and I realized after, as much as I thought I was trying to do the best thing to jump far, that I didn't give myself a chance. I gave myself no chance because I didn't take my sleep seriously enough.
Sleep.
I didn't take my diet seriously enough. I didn't take my recovery seriously enough. You know, like a lot of young people, I got a day off. Oh, let's do as much as I can on that day off. I can work a part-time job. I can go and see somebody. I can, you know, I can play tennis with my mates or whatever. I can go to the beach. You know, all poor choices. Not all of the time are they poor choices, but if you're doing them all the time, poor choices. Got to a point probably where if I was going to make a choice about my athletics and fulfilling my potential, I probably could have moved and trained with Vasily, who I mentioned. Had I done that and made all those correct choices, I'm realistic. I don't think I could have jumped anything more than 1650, which probably doesn't do a lot for me, but it achieves my potential. But I chose to be somewhere else with my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife. So I don't regret the choice because I got my wife and I got a son out of it, but it wasn't the best thing for my athletics. And I can kind of flow on from that. And if I talk about my wife, she was as good as she was because she did the right things and she made the right choices and she was selfish. She like, to use the relationships as the example, she'd been in a relationship and said, well, I need to go here for my athletics. So if you want to come, good. If you don't, see you later.
Incredible, the commitment, isn't it? Sacrifices.
So if you want to be a championship performer, if you want to be a medalist, then you must set up your life to enable that. And you need to be prepared to ask yourself the hard questions, or have somebody available to you that will ask those questions of you.
Yeah, and I think you need an ecosystem to support that, because trying to do that on your own for too long is just too hard. But I'm guessing that people like your wife would have had a few people in her corner batting for her. I mean, Deirdre Ryan, she just threw in randomly. You remember this, Olivia? And then I spent 4 years in Germany. She was like 24. Who does that? And she didn't even emphasize it. I mean, if she's watching this, 4 years in Germany. I mean, I moved to England, right? I moved to Liverpool when I was 19, 20, and I thought that was a big deal, but it was like a 40-minute flight. Moving to Germany, she didn't speak the language. How did she fund it? How did she adopt? I mean, it's such a massive, massive sacrifice. And she also spent time,
yeah, she said she did a part-time job over there. And at the time, there was no indoor facility in Ireland. And the weather was a big factor here, because she said she just couldn't. She was finding it hard to come back. She got to 192 here in Ireland with no, facilities, but she was looking for something perfect, and she was on the circuit, and then she saw the setup in Leverkusen, and she just went tick, tick, tick. It ticks all the boxes. So she made it happen. I suppose she saw it as well, and then she said, "That's where I want to go."
Commitment to do that.
The commitment,
24, 25. If you've got a university degree, and parents were kind of level-headed, and an environment where all your peers are going off getting good jobs, traveling the world, having a good time, to go against all of that and say, no, I'm still going to persevere with this in my mid-20s. That blows my mind. I mean, these guys deserve every bit of support they can get, in my opinion.
Well, I love that approach, and it frustrates me to no end when I see people that don't look further than their own suburb. Oh, there's a coach there. That's probably the best I can do. No, if you really want to be the best, scour the globe and find out who is the best person for you to train with, and move there.
And Deirdre did that. Fair play to her.
Yeah.
The last
just can I maybe ask there, let's say, and I'm aiming here at Pippa and David and our current jumpers, we're talking about transitioning onto another level. You're at the top of the pile from an Irish perspective. What influence does that have on your motivation? The way the competitions are set up at the moment, you're probably jumping by yourselves. That has probably added pressure, and does it motivate you more to get higher, or are you kind of going into a competition? Oh God, look, I'll hit the 180 here, or 175 or 120 or whatever year. And how do you motivate yourself when you're jumping against yourself, I guess? And is there anything from a competition point of view? Likewise, probably in Australia, Alex, you're doing jumpers and they're at such a level that they're jumping by themselves when it gets to competitions. Should we be looking at competitions more athlete based, as in going with the conventional, have it go up in increments of 0.5, and if you knock the bar, then that's it, go home, Just Pippa, maybe David, you can come in there jumping, and then Alex, what you doing in Australia, if there's anything?
I'll let the athletes take this to start with.
I don't know really. What motivates me? In a way, I kind of feel like I don't need motivation because I want to do it. Like everything that I'm doing at the moment, I'm not giving up anything to do it. I'm choosing to do it, and I want to do it. And I go into every competition, and I think I want to be the best here. And I'm constantly trying to be myself in training and competition. I am my own motivation. I don't really need anything. I just do it.
I feel the same. Like I'm definitely very competitive with myself, and like I obviously want to improve in any way I can, jumping, in the gym, anything. And then in terms of my motivation. Like I have goals that I like. If there's competitions on, I want to be at a certain competition. I want to be at like an elite level, and yeah, I guess that's.
Yeah.
I just want to be at a level. I'm very competitive.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, would it be advantageous to you guys if you were actually jumping and you had somebody, a group of people at your level jumping in the competition? You know, let's say it can be daunting, I'd say, after you've cleared the top height and then you're kind of sitting down waiting for your next jump to come while everybody else is out of the competition. You know, that transitioning into that period is something to, I think, understand and get a mindset, you know, because underage juvenile, there's, you know, 10 people all jumping together and you're all, and then next thing, as you're moving up the ranks, you're jumping basically by yourself. And I think that's
I think that's a super
Can I just say something there, Martin? Sorry.
Sorry,
Anton. No, I just think that that's part of the findings, like finding a good coach, finding the right environment. It's actually finding better competition too. So if you're, I mean, I guess in the UK, perhaps we have more clubs, but there's a like a, you know, it's a regional, you know, kind of setup, and there's a national setup, and often athletes will win regional competitions easily, and they'll join a bigger club, and when they join a bigger club, they'll build competition. And I think that you have to kind of make that effort to do that, otherwise you will be jumping 180 week in, week out, and winning every time. I know Pippa did this, which she left her regional club, joined a national league club, and because of that had better competition. And I think that you have to kind of seek that out, just like seeking out better opportunities for training really. It might be different in Ireland, perhaps the pool of jumpers perhaps isn't quite so big, but I still don't think that would stop you from seeking out better competitions wherever that might be.
There's also like opens that you can do around Europe that you can easily find. It's just going out there and finding them.
It is a really important point, because here in Ireland, many good athletes come into a competition when everyone else is left, and then you're left up jumping on your own. And there's even now we have some good 15, 16-year-old athletes who are way beyond everybody else. But on a European level, they're just okay, you know. So they do need to connect with other jumpers, you know. So
I think
like you can have all the
Power was
self-motivation, but you know, you need that to push you forward. It's like, who was saying it last week? Even Deirdre was saying it when she was training with whoever it was she was training with, and they were jumping great heights, and she realized, then it clicked in her head, they're doing the same training she's doing, they're doing absolutely nothing different, they've no secret bullet, why can't I do it? You know, because if you're on your own, you know, you might be.
Yeah, I guess from Alex there, like, let's say when Brendan is jumping, I mean, he's obviously not jumping by himself, he'll have other guys, but when bar goes up, do you kind of have any kind of outside the box thinking as competition wise, that Brendan has a handicap in that during the competition he's, you know, 0.1 ahead, that you have a 2-bar system kind of idea, you know, just to give him the experience of jumping against somebody at the same time, because that's what he will be in the major championships, but probably in his local setting he hasn't, you know. And
well, we're actually pretty fortunate where we are. So we have Joel Baden here, who's got a PB of 230, but he's probably one of the most inconsistent high jumpers I've ever come across in my entire life. He can jump 230, then 205, and then 220, and then 210. And so while he's good, he's very unreliable for competitive stimulus. We've got probably a handful of boys that can jump around 220. You know, not really. And then we've got Hamish Kerr in New Zealand, who recently jumped 231. So New Zealand's pretty convenient, although despite the fact that neither of our countries have basically any COVID cases, we can't really travel between them at the moment. So yeah, so we have reasonable competition in that regard. And from the girls, we've got Nicola McDermott, who has a personal best of 198. And so Eleanor and Nicola competing against each other is pretty good. I mean, you can't ask for much more. If you look at the world outdoor rankings last year, it was 1-2 Ukraine, 3-4 Australia. So pretty good position for us. But below that, the next best we have is 184, who's a 16-year-old girl. And then we maybe have, so we've got like 184, 183, 182, and then that's it over 180. So they get bored jumping against each other all the time. So they just go to different venues and compete against each other. So a little bit the same for Brennan. So I'll tell you a little bit about my thinking for preparation for Tokyo. Is after we have our national championships, I'm trying to get out of the country as soon as we possibly can, so we can put ourselves somewhere where they are going to have regular competitive stimulus. Because without it, I don't think that you can contend for a medal at a major championship. Like we will create systems like Martin talked about in training of creating handicaps and 2-bar systems and all that kind of jazz. But when it gets down to it, competing against the best people is 100% necessary.
For sure.
So where that location is going to be for us, I do not know yet. Japan is a super convenient option for us travel-wise, because virtually the same time zone and 9-hour flight. And from the men's perspective, they have 7 or 8 guys over 225. So between 225 and Tobe is their best at 235 PB. So perfect. From a women's perspective, they're rubbish. So it gives us absolutely no competitive stimulus for Eleanor. But then, provides the tricky task of where to locate in Europe and what happens with, if we go somewhere, does that then influence our ability to go back into somewhere else or go to somewhere else? But either way, we've got to get access to the best competition.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Brain then.
You're on mute, Antoine.
Yeah, sorry. I think Nadia Power was a great example of that. There was a good article in the Irish Times about the work she did in getting in, traveling across Europe, spending a fortune on COVID tests, getting from meet to meet. Going back a little bit, but Tommy Cummins, Paul, you'd know him. He was a 10,500 meter runner who made the Sydney Olympics and got really good value for the talent he had at that level. And one of the big factors was that he got into great competitions, and he worked extremely hard to get into those meets where often it would be a big negotiation, and he represented himself. And I feel that interpersonal skill, the soft skills of negotiation, were a big quality that helped him succeed. And I think Nadia is similar. I think to be a good athlete, you need to be smart and you need to be resourceful and strategic. That's just a statement. So unless anyone else has any questions.
Very few athletes finish their career, Anton, and say they got the most out of themselves, so it's obviously a difficult thing to do. So you got to really plan it out and make a lot of sacrifices. But maybe know two examples of people who you could say got close to that. Both would be in more technical events, actually. Hurdles, I would say Derval O'Rourke got close to her potential. Certainly picked the right championships. And I remember spending a wee bit of time with Brian Doyle and his future wife, Ailey Doyle. Made a few sacrifices, moved home, and really, with the nutrition, the strength and conditioning, the hard training, the recovery, really took it serious and went on to get 16 medals between Olympics, World Europeans, and Worlds and stuff. And that was a type of athlete that it didn't come just really, really easy. or that was maybe more the Stefan home year-on-year improvement. But yeah, for that consistency, it does take a lot of expertise. I think if you have talent, you know, you can actually have short-term success with a bad setup. Maybe a wee bit like the story you told earlier, Alex. You know, but to get the long-term success, yeah, you need to tick a lot of boxes.
Actually, before and while I think of it, I see David Murphy is there. There's we had a great up and coming jumper here, Sophie David. I think she's gone to Australia. So I think I seen her jump 175. I think she's only about 15. Last week or 2 weeks ago, maybe. So that's something to watch out for in Australia.
Yeah,
Alex, you have a good one coming, hopefully your way. So she's still Irish at heart.
Where at?
I think she moved into Perth. She's only gone over since this time last year, but she's 6'2" with very raw talent. But it's a good kid, a good loss.
Well, we don't like Perth. They locked the rest of the country out for 9 months.
She probably brought it over, yeah.
I know the right people in terms of high jump in Perth, so I can kind of make sure put in touch or looked after if needed.
Yeah, actually, I did try and reach out to her new coach. But what I find is I have quite a few. I've one triple jumper at the moment. She is over in, luckily she went over, her boyfriend works in, where is she now? Over in the Bahamas. And there's 2 coaches looking after her there because of lockdown. She's able to jump in with those kind of the Olympic group. There's also, what I do find with a lot of coaches is that when you do try to reach out, they don't want to know what you've already done with them. Even with the likes of Sophie, when she started jumping with me, she was 155, and within the year we would have got her up to 175 or 175 she's at now. I know there's still a long way to go, but she's a raw talent. There's a lot to pull out from. But I did reach out and see if I could get the coach just to let them know what we have been doing. And they don't want to know because they're professionals. Like to be honest, I'm more of I'm a jumps coach in Ireland. I know I've been away with a couple of years. I know I've met Pippa once or twice, and Dave I know for a good few years now as well. But it's
no disrespect to
it's just getting
but being professional is about knowing where your athletes come from.
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's
frozen.
He's frozen. He's
Good
frozen.
point, though. You need to know where people are coming from in order to build on it.
And even the girl I have over in the Bahamas at the moment, it's the years of work we have done, and it's just to pass that on, and which I would hope to be able to kind of springboard them to a better coach to move them on. So it's just getting that information through to the next coach to push our athletes on to the next level.
Yeah.
So let's say from your perspective, Alex, when you, let's say, take over or take on or push on an athlete, would you get or have had much conversation from your previous coaches? Or is it a one and all 100% takeover?
Hostile.
I've had all scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I've had all scenarios. Well, I can touch on them briefly. So Brandon, I coached from 15 years of age. I'm the only coach he's ever had. So that's easy. Eleanor, yeah, she no consultation with her previous coach because he cut himself off from everyone. So that's easy. But essentially I talked to her. I got my information from her. What did you do? How did you do it? so on and so forth. So I formed my picture of where she came from that way. Somewhere, so the Malaysian guy I coached, Naraj Singh Randawa. So I got him at 222, and he'd been coached for 222, and he was about 23 years old. And he'd been coached for 8 years by a guy from Uzbekistan.
Did he let him go, or was there intervention?
Sorry?
Was there intervention, or did he let him go?
I don't know how amicable it was, but I believe it was a case of the coach from Uzbekistan was looking to move to Russia and to leave Malaysia. And the technical director of the Malaysian Federation at the time was an Australian. And so he sought me out.
Do you think the Federation has a responsibility to play some role in intervention?
Depends on the country. Depends on the
Jessica Ennis had that situation in the UK, Paul. We talked about this. The authorities or the Federation in Britain wanted people to gravitate towards Loughborough. And as a multi-eventer, they had obviously all the right facilities and people in Loughborough, but she resisted, and there was a bit of drama about that. Personally, I see some merit in intervention, but I'm curious about other people's opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, it really depends on how the Federation operates. You know, I had a lot of contacts in Japan where they have 3 national coaches. Like they're not head coaches, but they're national coaches for high jump. And none of those coaches coaches any of the high jumpers on a daily basis. Most of the time, they all do their own thing. And then they see, how often do you see a coach? Oh, once every 2 weeks, once a month. How do you decide your training plan? I just turn up to the track on the day and I decide my own. So I asked the question to them many times. Do you not think that it would be better that someone coaches them full time and decides their schedule for them because they are athletes and not coaches? Yes, that's a good point that you make. Okay, so are you going to change it? No. But that's how their system operates. There's a lot of cultural related things there, but that's how they do it. Malaysian Federation, they make interventions. They're not always good ones because it's a federation that's disease ridden with political issues. So the reason, for example, the reason I stopped coaching both of my Malaysian athletes is because the president of the federation said, if you continue to train with Alex, that's fine, but you get no money. And so I just said to them, like, I'm not going to tell you guys to go without money. And the amount of money that they were receiving was quite good. You know, they had free housing, they had free food, they had all the medical was free. Training camps, competition, everything funded, plus a living allowance. Train with him, but it's gone. Despite the fact that they were by far and away the most successful athletes in the country. Because he didn't like me, sorry, no funding. So intervention is not always the best way. It just really depends on the culture. But to go...
Categorize that as parochialism again, Alex. I just wrap it all up in that silliness, the small time, narrow-minded thinking. I mean, surely best practice is best practice. It's measurable. I mean, athletics has that advantage over other sports. You can take the bias, subjectivity out of it. If you're good, you're good. You know, it's quite clear.
Agreed. And so to go back to, so when I started to coach Niraj, I didn't have any contact with his coach because there was a bit of a language barrier difficulty. Also, just he really wasn't a super accessible guy. And so, but I was fortunate enough to be able to see all the training diaries as well. So all training diaries were handed over to me. I can sit there and I can read them, and it was very typical of a Soviet system, and kind of being aware of how that system works, I was pretty familiar with how he'd been trained. So yeah, it's regardless of how you get it, it's important to get the backstory, to get the history of the athlete. Otherwise, you know, you're kind of just taking shots in the dark.
And is there any key fundamentals that you look at straight away, Alex, when you get a jumper? I mean, I suppose what we call the low-hanging fruit, you know, from a jumping, either modeling or to put into their daily routine. There's something key that you can say, okay, I'll look at these 3 or 4 things first, and then I'll build around them.
Well, you need to be able to run efficiently.
That's good.
It might sound pretty simple, but
no, and Fuzz always stresses that.
Yeah.
Running is.
If you can't run with great mechanics and great rhythms, time and time and time and time again, then don't worry about high jump. Don't worry about it.
Olivia is a big believer in mental training, sports psychology. Alex, we all are, but Olivia is very passionate about it.
And Joan, it's one element. It's only one. You can't. You have to, of course, be able to run, condition yourself, do all your strength training, everything else. But because high jump is so mentally focused, at the end of the day, Dennis Doyle calls it the gladiator event. At the end of the day, it's just you and that bar. That bar goes up by this much, and you might have cleared it by this much. And I see it time and time again when I'm watching jumpers. I'll say to a jumper, "What were you thinking on the 5th stride? What happened?" You can see their mind just go. You can see it. I can see it anyway. I see it go. So for me, and it was very interesting talking to Deirdre Ryan last week. She started her mental prep work with Lucy at the age of 14. Deep visual, deep stuff, not psych prep, real deep mental prep work. And listening to Stephen Holm, his best friend now is his mental coach. Abby Sotomayor, there's a great YouTube, and I'm teasing you back, Anton, too. And but I'm way labelled for you, boy. Don't you worry. We know each other since we were kids, by the way, Alex, myself, and Anton. 35 years now. So yeah, and he's no sisters. So I've all brothers. So I'm really into that fella. Yeah, but anyway, off you go, Alex.
Giving him a nudge. Don't worry, I'm kicking him under the table.
Oh, well done, Chev. Well done. Oh, see, she's my sister.
Fully committed.
Yeah, she's my sister. Sorry, Alex. So your perspective, Alex, on mental prep side, yeah.
Yeah, it's hugely important, but it's dependent on the individual. So, for example, Brandon tried to work with the sports psych once purely because it was a service that was available to him for free. After 5 minutes, he decided that he hated the guy and he never went again.
And I think that's really important. Javier Sotomayor said it as well. Firstly, I think you have to connect with the person. If you don't, it's that person, because you're going deep there. It's that person, emotional connection too. So it may not work. It's like going to see any therapist or counselor. You can walk straight out of the room and you know straight away this person doesn't get me. And it was interesting about what Javier said was, it won't work for everyone because you have to have the consciousness for it as well, or the awareness. But that's life too. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and as you go through life, you'll just see things in a different perspective. When you're 18, 19, 20, as Stephen Holmes said on the first call, he would have run from a mental coach. He said, "No way, Jose, I don't want it." But then when he hit 25 and he did seek out a mental coach and he met someone that he clicked with, he thought he sang his praises. So
you have to be ready for it. If you're not receptive to it, then don't worry about it. And so it has a lot to, just has a lot to do with where you are mentally and emotionally in your life. And you know, having coached Brandon since he was 15 years of age, I've seen all those phases that he's gone through. I've seen him from a 15-year-old boy who has no idea about the world at all to a man with a wife, setting up a home and a career, you know, with his own thoughts and opinions on the world.
And just to touch on there, Alex, Anton put on a lovely link onto the advertising this. And to me, reading that link, it was you were answering questions, and to me, it sounds like you have a lot of the qualities of a good mental coach as well, from the way you see life and view things too. So
well,
maybe you already
sometimes I feel
encapsulate
like
that
a
for him.
psychologist and not a coach.
And sometimes coaching is that, it's counselling sessions almost. That's what I find.
I can give you a case study. I can give you a case study. So another athlete that I coach right now is Marco Fascinotti, if anyone knows him. For those who don't, he's got a PB of 235, and probably through 2014, 2015, he was easily one of the best high jumpers in the world, and was training with Fuzz at the time. Fuzz, in all his great qualities, can be a very conflicting character at times. Calls a spade, and if you don't like it, see you later. And Marco didn't like it, so see you later. He changed coaches, had quite a few injuries, including a lot of problems with osteitis pubis.
Been there.
Yeah, huge injury problems. Lost his condition, lost his headspace, confidence at zero, at probably negative. And in 2018, he asked me to coach him, and I said, sure, let's give it a go. So he moved to Australia, and for 18 months, he was physically in the country. Mentally, he wasn't there. For 18 months, it was like sometimes I just talked to a vacant body, and really didn't matter what we did. He got nothing out of it. We got to a point where Marco was able to look at himself and start to acknowledge what was going on, and able to tackle his fears and tackle his insecurities. And that happened probably in about May or June this year. 2020. May or June 2020. So from October 2018 to May to June 2020, there was almost nothing happening. But now we've got a guy.
You brought that out of him, Alex. That's the point. You know, you have those I don't know you personally, but it sounds like you have those natural gifts to just connect on that human level, and that it's emotional intelligence too. I know you're doing a lot of that there in Australia, so it's just that. Yeah.
And so this guy, he had a phenomenal winter of training. He scissored 205. So Sam Pitt scissors 205 from 4 steps. We did we call them 3-step hops over hurdles. So running 3 steps, hop over the hurdle, hop, take off and land on the same leg. So 5 hurdles at 150 centimeters high and about 11 meters apart. And I'm not talking like, you know, if you look at home hurdles, Stefan Holm is the only person that does home hurdles good. He's the only person in history to have done them good. Everybody else manipulates themselves into ridiculous positions and says, yeah, I jumped a hurdle that was 1.70 meters high. Great. It has nothing to do with high jump. Marco was going over 150 with a completely vertical torso. Not really manipulated in any ridiculous positions. He jumped 225 off 4 steps in training. The guy was in fantastic shape. To 24 meters overhead shot with a 4 kilo. He's now competed 3 times and he's jumped 222. Not one conversation during the course of the competition has been about anything technical. The last conversation we had, the last competition, midway through the competition, he was standing there telling me that that morning he was standing there in front of his mirror saying, am I good enough? Can I do it? Despite the fact that he's done all these things. So my feedback is, yes, you are good enough. You've got to believe you're good enough. Stand at the top of the run-up and tell yourself that you're good enough. There's people that are sitting in the stand that have come here for you because they believe in your ability, because they love you, because you are good enough. Not put your foot here, you're over your marker. Move your shoulder this way or that way. And that carries into like every time, if he does a technical session with Brandon beats him every time. Because he thinks he's better. And Marco loses every time because he thinks he's not as good. So yeah.
Isn't that ironic, the contrast there, that Brandon kind of has this innate confidence, whereas Marco has been through a different set of circumstances and experience, and as a result needs that support much more. Individual. Is that available in Ireland, David, Barry? Can you get free psychology, sports psychology?
Probably only available through the carding system once you're funded, I think.
Are you carded, David?
No.
What do you need to
and then just to jump in there about sports psychology is great, but it's just there's a lot to it, but it's still CBT based, cognitive behavioral therapy based. What you were describing there, Alex, that goes like even deeper, you know. That's deep. Yeah,
this is hugely deep, and
yeah.
Marco will be fine with this because we have a really open and honest relationship, and he doesn't mind because it's all things that he's dealing with, and he's dealing with them openly. And it goes back to his childhood. It goes back to, you know, he's a child of divorced parents, and it's to do with issues that he had, you know, with confidence that resulted from that divorce and not being able to make friends at a certain point as a kid, and that still impacts him today.
Yeah, and that's my point, because it's not psych prep. I can do this. You have to, for me, the way I see an athlete, if you really want to bring it to elite level, it's mind, body, energy, body as well. So it's feeding your body with the most nutritious fuel you can, ensuring that your mental and emotional state is as pristine, primed as it can, and then ensuring that your physical body, your muscles, your tendons, your joints, everything is super ready to go. It's like Formula One, but at every level. And you can't leave out a level, because if you leave out a level, it'll shift. That's just the way I see it anyway. So thanks, Alex. I love everything you said there. Now, Antoine, hope you were listening. Yeah.
No, I'm really pleased that you raised that, Alex, and I think it supports that holistic approach. Paul, I can't help thinking of you at the European Championships in 2002 at the Munich Olympic Stadium, when you didn't sleep for something like 2 or 3 days. Paul has insomnia. I hope you don't mind me sharing that. But a lot of athletes struggle with their sleep, and I don't know. I mean, you've probably tried a million things, Paul, but I'm sure if we had relatively easy, accessible sports psychology assistance, it might have helped with that kind of thing.
I'm not sure. Maybe, I'm sure there's ways to make it better, certainly. Things. Yeah, sure, even give me my own room in the hotel would have been a start, something, you know. But I know I'm 43 now, not competing, no pressure, and I still can't sleep. So I don't think it was an easy fix. I did go to a sports psychologist and stuff. And, I just like the talk on, you know, there's time and place when you're ready for that type of thing. And mentally, I was strong enough, I think, you know, for the athletics. And I tried to make up for it in other ways, you know, like good nutrition and trying to recover as best as could. But the sleep was always going to be a big factor. I was never going to have a longevity, successful career, you know, year in, year out, reaching your best without sleeping. I knew that from early on. The only thing that done was depress me. And every time I went to a specialist or I logged on to some conference about sleep, they basically told you how important it was, which just made it worse. You know? You know, rather than actually help.
Do you mind me asking, did you ever get like a liver check? Did they ever look at your liver? Because the liver can throw out sleep as well. Yeah.
That would be. I think that would be a new one. I had blood tests and stuff, but unless it's an honest one that would have come back, I'm not sure. I wouldn't even have known, you know, what they would have been looking for.
Yeah, there's certain markers they could have looked for that, like the liver. And it's just, I was talking to Paul about this before. The world we live in nowadays is very toxic. The air, the water, the food, everything. And our livers are 90% of us on the planet. Our livers just are sluggish. They're not working optimally. And if your liver isn't working optimally, you can throw out your sleep as well. Yeah. Throw your hormones out, put on weight when you're eating. You could be eating a restrictive diet. You're still putting on that belly fat, you know? So it's like, that's why I love looking at athletes in a completely holistic approach, because there's so much nowadays that we have to be primed for.
So sorry, just to go back to Alex, looking at the kind of the three fundamental things you said, running, and maybe I suppose psychologically apt the athlete is there any, or maybe physical, is there any other standout?
Yeah, so the other thing that's interesting for me, and again, I think part of it's natural selection, what I'll mention here, but in my experience, if I take a high jumper and say, okay, I want you to do 5 hops or 10 hops for distance, then the jumping side will just be vertical, and the penultimate side displaces flatly. Of course, that's the idea for high jump, but all I've asked them to do is hop for distance, and the natural characteristics come out. And whether that's just by chance in terms of the high jumpers that I've coached, but I've seen it in pretty much every one of them. So they're inclined for a horizontal to vertical conversion. So again, it comes back to the question, can all good high jumpers do it? Or is that something that you need to be able to do to be a good high jumper? If you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other characteristic what I would suggest is probably the only one that I'd go in terms of just pure numbers. If you're looking at a step up, then if we're looking at a 20 centimeter box, you need to be able to do 3 times body weight to be a world-class high jumper on both legs. But there's like this, it's a massive jigsaw puzzle. But there are probably 3 things that I've noticed that occur.
Alex, have you been to Ireland before?
Once for 12 hours.
Once? Oh, stopover.
Maybe 12 hours, maybe 14 hours.
You were on your way to somewhere, yeah?
I went to watch Eleanor compete in Dublin in 2019 at the Morton Games.
Yeah.
I was competing.
I was going to say, I feel like Pippa was in the competition. It was a warm and sunny evening in Dublin that year.
I think that was the best season. She was good that day. I think that was the best she jumped all season. It was a good day. Yeah,
well, it was about 10 degrees and raining.
Yeah, but she jumped well.
Yeah, she did. She did. But I'd been with Brandon in Birmingham, and then so I flew across to see her, and then Brandon was competing next in Paris, so I flew out the next morning, and so I've been to a hotel and a track in Dublin.
Yeah, you'll come back again.
I hope to get there.
Needless to say, you'd be very welcome, and you'll have a room to stay in. We're going to put you up with Javier. He's already agreed to come over.
He's booked in, and Stefan. Yeah, they're all going to your mother's house, Antone, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah. They'll sample our performance-enhancing Guinness. Well, Alex, you've been amazing. You've given us so much time. You're so generous. Please let me carry your bag someday or help out in any way I can. Or if you're in Barden Ridge, just let us know. I'd love to meet up again.
Yeah.
And if you can populate the Facebook page with any videos or any kind of references that you made tonight, please keep in touch. That would be fantastic. It's been extremely valuable for us. So thank you so much.
Those videos you mentioned would be great.
Yeah, well,
and if you throw them up on the Facebook page, if you could, then everyone can see them, and there's no.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Well, just thanks for having me on, and thanks for sitting here and listening to me for a few hours. I've actually also enjoyed hearing everything that you guys have got to say, and if I had to pick a highlight from anything that I heard, then it was definitely Pippa saying that she doesn't miss out on anything. She makes a choice and she gets what she wants out of it, and that's, for me, that's just key to every athlete. If you feel like you're sacrificing something, then you're in it for the wrong reason.
I just want to say, Alex, sorry about it, Stephen. I sent a message half an hour ago saying I had to leave, but it's been such an interesting chat. I've stayed on. And in fact, I'm supposed to be meeting Pippa for a training session. We delayed it, so it's been really good to have you on. So
sorry, guys.
Thanks for insights. It's been really good.
Yeah, no, but like I really enjoyed talking to you all, and I'm available anytime to anyone. If you got any questions, whatever, just reach out.
Hi, Alex, fellow Aussie here. How are you?
Oh, nice to hear the familiar sound.
I really enjoyed this session, so thank you very much. My daughter's now getting into a bit of high jumping, so it's always just nice to hear from the elites and the professionals. So not that I want her to go down the, it's just sort of just encouraging her and just making sure I do right by her. So hearing from all of you has been pretty good. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're most welcome. Yeah, but happy to try and provide anything that you guys want. No,
terrific.
No problem.
Excellent.
So guys, excellent, Alex. Thanks a million. Really, thanks a million. Gord Mila Mahagud, as we say here. Thanks. Yeah.
That's it. We'll wrap it up and let Pippa get training. And obviously, does anyone know how Sarah Lavin did in their heats of the?
Yeah, we missed it.
PB. Another PB. She came second, qualified. So great run.
That's great.
So,
had a small screen in the corner on there.
Terrific. Glad you're paying attention. You're watching European Championship.
I was going to say, Pip and Steve, I hope you have a great session now as well. Didn't get to say goodbye.
Yeah, we managed to get a gym we can use. It's about one of the few things we can use at the moment. It's a rehab gym, which means we can use it, although we're not using it for rehab. But don't tell anyone. So that's great. So we'll go and do that this afternoon. So cool. But thanks again,
Pippa, Pippa, thanks for sharing as well. It's really lovely to hear from you too. Yeah, and hopefully we'll hear more. And you too, David. Yeah. Thanks,
Okay, best of luck, David. Good luck, Barry. Thank you so much for your insights. And Alex, hope to see you around town again.
No, well, I just wanted to say quickly that I never met Barry, but he competed against Brandon once, I think, at Hendon in London at the Shaftesbury Barnet track. And it was, I think it might have been Jumps Fest or something in 2011. And they had a horrendous announcer, and I can still hear it. And it is, next up is Barry Pender.
You have a good memory. I can't remember back that far.
Yeah, well, just I think it was the horrendous announcer, and it just stuck with me. But on that note, guys, thanks again for having me, and enjoy the rest of your day and weekend.
Fantastic. Thanks, really.
Thanks a million.
Thanks very much.
Bye bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.
Question.